Hello, this is the training video for the TreadSpec install for tire profiles.
TreadSpec is a ramp system with an embedded laser and camera. As a vehicle rolls over the ramps, TreadSpec generates diagnostic data points related to the tire's alignment and rotation.
Here are the tools you'll need to complete this install. A rotary hammer drill to drill the concrete, an extension cord, a drill for mounting various components, a 3/8 inch drive ratchet, a 9/16 inch socket with swivel extension, a complete set of 3/8 metric hex sockets, a hacksaw for cutting the metal wire mold, a shop vac with a crevice attachment, 12 inch or longer 3/8 inch SDS drill bit, 5/32 and 3/16 inch SDS drill bit, a needle nose vice grips to connect the cables, an 8-foot ladder for mounting the camera, a small level, a snap chalk line with blue or non-permanent chalk, a rubber mallet, microfiber towels, and shop towels for cleanup. Step 1. Check in and inventory. When you arrive on site, the first thing you should do is call the tire profile support number found on the control box to let them know you have made it on site.
Once checked in, locate the pallet with the service manager and ask for it to be delivered to the service drive and placed in the lane that it's to be installed in. Leave enough room for the ramps to be laid out. The IT resource will provide you with the IP address, subnet, and gateway, or it will be DHCP.
Each system requires a printer. The site may have purchased one specifically for the TreadSpec, or they may already be using a network printer. Be sure to record the make, model, and IP information for later use. Step 2. Installing the control box. We're now ready to begin the installation. The first piece to be installed is the control box. Your site planogram will dictate its placement.
Typically, the control box is placed on an adjacent wall to the service drive or between the overhead door openings.
The site should have placed electrical outlets and data jacks at the control unit location. Use wall anchors or the provided Tapcon screws if the wall is concrete or brick. Be sure to use a level.
Once mounted, use the provided white patch cable to connect the appropriate wall jack to the leftmost jack inside the control box.
Step 3. Networky type stuff. Configure the IP information that you've received from the manager.
If there's no connectivity being registered by Windows, find the IT resources and inform TPI support.
If connectivity is established, call the tire profile support number to confirm remote connectivity and if the customer is using a network printer. Step 4. Installing the camera.
The height and placement of the camera is very important. It should never exceed 78 inches from lens to ground level. 6 feet is optimum. Always mount the camera as close to the center line of the lane as possible. Be sure there are no attachments on the garage doors that would prevent the camera from being mounted there.
Open the camera and feed the provided patch cable from the Ethernet port inside the camera housing through the mounting arm and into the second port, the PoE one, within the control box. There is a spring-released catch on the arm that you must release to remove the mounting plate. Note the direction of the hooks when doing so. Once you have determined where the mounting plate must be, use the adhesive template to identify screw placement. Do not use the plastic anchors that come with the camera. Use the appropriate screws for whatever type of surface you are mounting to. When reattaching the camera to the mounting plate, you may need to back the locking screws out depending on the size of the screws you have used. Be sure to use the set screw. You'll orient the camera at the end of the installation once the full unit has been installed. Step 5. The printer. The third port within the control box is used for the printer.
This will only be used about 10% of the time when the site buys a new printer with the system. About 90% of the time, though, the store will already have a printer on the network. Either way, work with TPI support to confirm that printer is online.
Now is the time to provide them with the printer's make, model, and IP scheme that you obtained earlier. Step number 6. Measurements. Consult your plans for the unit locations.
Typically, the beginning of the unit will be 8 feet inside the overhead door opening.
Now is the time to pull out your line. Chalk line, that is. Or painter's tape if you're made of money. If using a chalk line, be 100% sure that you're not using permanent or semi-permanent chalk. Usually the blue one will be fine. Establish your baseline at the bay doors. Measure to find the midpoint of this line. Now, from that midpoint, measure 8 feet into the bay and mark with your chalk. Tape would be more visible. Double check that this new line is perpendicular to the baseline. Using an L-square ruler is a quick way to save time from remeasuring things later. Number 7. Setting the ramp. You're now ready to temporarily set the ramp pieces. Start with the middle ramps and middle low bridge. Use the hooks on the middle ramps to connect the 3 pieces. Center the assembly on the center line and double check your 8-foot measurements from each corner of the ramp to the baseline. Next are the left and right ramps. Place these in line with the middle ramp with a very slight gap. Each exit ramp has a pre-trigger pad on them with its cable zip tied on the underside. Remove that zip tie and run the cable through this triangular hole, not the circle one, the triangular hole. It's very important not to pinch this cable in these next steps. Coil the leftover orange cables and tuck them back through the hole to keep it out of the way. You should be able to line up and drop the covers between the ramps smoothly. If there is resistance, readjust the positioning of the ramps and give it another go. Now that you have all 9 pieces laid out, check all of the measurements one more time. The entire unit must be centered and squared to the bay doors. Once you have double, triple, and maybe even quadruple checked all of your measurements, you can proceed to drill the holes for the concrete anchors. 8. Drop anchor. Again, begin with the middle ramp. Use your 3/8 inch concrete bit and SDS or hammer drill to drill through the concrete slab. Use a shop vacuum to clear the concrete dusts after drilling. Tap the wedge anchors into place using a hammer and non-pointed punch. It should be placed well below the lip of the ramp. Do not use lock washers on these anchors. Only use the fender washer and nut. Tighten the anchor into place with your 9/16 socket.
See where his tools are? Yep, off of the ramps. The powder coat is prone to scratches, so keep tools off to the side.
Repeat this process with the left and right entry and exit ramps. Number 9. Let's party. Once all the anchors have been placed and tightened down, you can remove the PRT covers and set each PRT into place. Based on their label, left driver's side and right passenger side, mount a PRT to each side of the middle low bridge using 2 bushings, 2 bolts, 2 metal washers, and 2 plastic washers from your hardware kit. Since the middle low bridge is powder coated, it might be a good idea to run your bolt in and out of the screw hole a few times to avoid binding during installation. These things are sensitive. The bolts will use a 5mm hex. This can be done with hex keys. It's a pretty tight space, so we recommend that you use a socket driver with the wobble extension and 5mm hex head socket. Do not over tighten these bolts. Again, these guys are sensitive. Number 10. Cabling. Use a needle nose pliers to remove the port caps, leaving one unused PoE port covered to protect the unit. This will be the one furthest from the control box. Snap off the teeth or tabs of the cable tray directly in front of all of the ports. That way they're not in the way of the cables. Now we can connect the PRT. Pull out the orange cable that you had moved out of the way previously, feed it through the closest hole on the PRT, and through the zip ties along the side of the PRT. Do not tighten the zip ties. They're only to act as cable guides. Feed the orange pre-trigger cable along that edge, through the tray, and into the pre-trigger port. Makes sense, right? You can use your needle nose pliers to slightly tighten into place. Then connect the car sensor and Y cable. The car sensor goes into the top right hole of the unit. Run the short end of the Y cable to the closest PRT and the long end to the furthest one. Makes sense, right? There are pipes built into the bridge to easily guide the cables to their respective sides. Run the gray car sensor cable through the zip ties along the cable tray and to the car sensor port. Again, tighten slightly with your pliers. Unbox the trigger sensors and mount to the PRT frame. Push them up as far as they'll go and pull back to ensure they are aligned properly on the brackets. Do not over-tighten these. I sense a theme here. They're made of plastic. The black cable from the trigger sensor will follow the same path as the pre-trigger cable. Good thing you didn't tighten those zip ties. Run it through the cable tray and plug into the trigger port. And you guessed it, slightly tighten it into place. You'll also find a male-to-male cable that connect the PRT units to one another.
Finally, use the long green cable, the one with the male and female ends, to connect the PRT, with the male end, to the control box, with the female end. Be sure to tighten all connections within the PRT using the key at the very bottom of each connector. Make sure they are well seated and not crooked before doing so. Tighten to snug.
Coil all excess cable inside the control box. Coil any other additional cables inside the cable tray beneath its cover. Place the trigger sensor covers and PRT covers into place.
Next, place the remaining screws in the cover using anti-seize on every one.
Note your plastic and metal raceways. Use the plastic one for cables on the wall near the control box. Leave a 1/2 inch gap on the control box's side and use the 90-degree connector to transition to the metal floor raceway. Cut to length so it butts up right next to the trigger sensor, and use the 5/32 drill bit and Phillips head Tapcon screws. You only need to place one about every other hole. Don't go too crazy. Tape the cable within the raceway and push the top cover into place using your mallet until you hear a click. Number 11. Test with support. Before putting the final screws on the PRT cover, car sensor, and middle plate, contact Tire Profile Support to orient the camera and begin testing the system.
The process begins by pulling a vehicle 2 to 3 feet past the exit ramp edge and leaving it there for support to zoom, pan, and focus the cameras on the license plate. Then up to 12 drive-overs per unit are needed to set up the system. TPI support will let you know when the unit is operational.
Number 12. Train the staff. Train the service manager and on-site staff through how to use the device, including how to open the PRT spring-loaded access doors, to clean the camera and laser lens with a microfiber towel. Once the staff has been trained, have the manager sign your paperwork. Hey, you did it! Just send in your deliverables, get checked off site, and call it a day.